Hi, I'm Gene Bergman, and welcome to Burlington Progressives TV. I'm the Ward 2 City Councilor, and I am here with my good friend and colleague, Milo Grant, who is the Central District City Councilor.
Yes.
And we're going to be here to talk about community safety and other
stuff.
things.
There's a lot going on for sure.
And my job is to just ask you some questions and have you explain what's going on. But this is, how are you doing, first of all?
I'm hanging in there. It's personally, I have a full-time job. This is like the busiest time of year for the industry that I'm in. I'm in benefits administration, basically. So shout out to everyone that's going through their open enrollment. Shout out to employers who've got to submit those enrollments. So that has put some added pressure on top of, hey, we just had like a 7-hour meeting Monday night.
We did.
Had a committee meeting last night, here with you tonight, which is wonderful. Have another committee meeting tomorrow. Yeah. And so time is just, so there's some days that are better than others, but I am very, very hopeful.
This is great. This is great. This is a hard job. People,
yeah.
They complain about, why don't you do this? Why don't you do that?
Yep.
Like we've got departments in our back pocket.
Exactly.
And treasuries in the front pocket.
Exactly. Why haven't you fixed that yet? Why
haven't you fixed that? Not why hasn't the city and all the structures and all the taxes that we've got? But you're the chair of the Public Safety Committee. So let's explain to people what you've been doing, what you are doing, with the understanding that there are many people out there who go, you guys aren't doing anything, right? We hear that all the time.
We hear that all the time. That is so frustrating for me. I think one of the main reasons, I was in a local establishment last week, and I was really taking someone to task for saying that we weren't doing anything, that the mayor wasn't doing anything, and then I, asked that person, what meetings are you watching? And inevitably, when people say these things or feel this way, they're not actually watching meetings.
Yeah.
And I can get that. We are all busy.
Yeah.
Some of these meetings are long.
Yeah.
I can get that. But you can make a decision. We have Town Meeting TV, does an awesome job recording just about every committee meeting, every city council meeting. People can watch these meetings at their convenience. And the meetings that aren't on Town Meeting TV, for example, the Public Safety Committee meeting, aren't on Town Meeting TV for a variety of reasons, of which hopefully we'll work on next year, but they are available to watch through the city's website, which goes to a system called Civic Clerk, which has the meeting agendas, any documentation or presentations associated with the meeting, and also the recording of the meetings under an area called Meeting Media. So these are available to people, and the minutes tell you what was discussed, gives you a summary, and then if you want to watch a certain conversation, you can just jump to that part of the meeting. I personally believe that at the bare minimum, people should be reading the minutes for city council.
Yeah.
They should be thumbing through the consent agenda. The consent agenda is an interesting place.
Yeah.
It's a very interesting place.
It's a lot of work that's done.
A lot of money is spent in the consent agenda.
Yeah. For important things that if
important things.
Yeah.
But when people want to know where the money is going, a lot of times what happens is the Board of Finance, very important committee meeting, it's literally talking about money. What are we approving for equipment, people, things? It goes through Board of Finance, and if they approve it, it is most of the things end up on the consent agenda, and then some of them go on the City Council deliberative agenda, and the deliberative agenda is where we have to discuss things, and if a vote is needed, we vote on it. So at the bare minimum, people should be looking at this to see what's being discussed in the city, to see what we're approving with regards to finances, and also to actually watch the meeting and jump to when Mayor Emma Mulvaney-Stanek is giving her her updates. This is what we're working on, you know, and sometimes it includes, a lot of times it includes the public safety initiatives that are being taken. So very, very important stuff. I find Mayor Emma's administration is far more transparent than the previous administration. And I feel that maybe people felt because they got so little information before or had so little understanding of what was going on in the city. I mean, I was a counselor and it was a fight to get information from the previous administration. So it's very different now. And if people don't know how to get to these things, don't understand how to find this information, please email us, email your city councilor if you're in a different ward, any one of us. You know, I often answer questions from people in other wards. I'm happy to do that.
Do it all the time.
And we will send you links, you know, and once you know where to go, you know, the information's in the same place. You just look for the date of the meeting that you need to look at. So that's
yeah, I mean,
really
it's
important.
Yeah, I mean, meetings. That's not that isn't the only thing that where work gets done.
Right.
I mean, the thing about it is you get reports on what people are doing all the time.
Right.
You know, city councilors work through meetings. Maybe we work through them collectively with committees or in the committee of the whole, so to speak, the whole entire city council. And then we'll make individual connections with department heads. I'm on the TOOC committee. I was meeting with BED around climate change matters, and then that will get translated back to the committee. So, you know, when you say, like, well, look at the meeting, I hope that folks understand that it's not that all this work is just happening in a meeting, and then nothing else is happening unless it's at the meeting. The meetings reveal what all these other things, what other things are happening, and then that's where many decisions are made, or where the process gets moved up the ladder, so to speak, or down the road, you know, so that their recommendations can be made.
Yes.
We spent a lot of time in actual working in the Transportation Utilities and Energy Committee, the TOOC, on this benchmarking ordinance that was just passed last night, and this was introduced like a month and a half ago and was part of other work that happened over a period of time. So we worked in the committee, we worked in between the committee, and finally it got adopted last night. So this process happens, and it's not unreasonably slow in terms of it. But I mean, it's a good point. You know, when people are directed to the meetings, they should really understand that it's a view, it's a window on the workings of their government, and that's, you know, it's a piece of transparency that we like. So what exactly is happening in the public safety committee?
Public safety. So a big part of what I try to do in public safety is I do a lot of education, because I found that people don't know what our police officers do. People had no real knowledge of what our fire department does. Our fire department has really picked up a lot of work, and they've been very innovative with some ideas that they've had, such as a community response team, and a recent project that they launched, which will is bringing medically assisted treatment to the street, so to speak. It used to be if someone had an overdose and they went to the hospital, they would be offered certain services, which would include medically assisted treatment, which would help essentially work with their body to minimize the need to abuse substances. And the hope would be they could get to that moment of clarity where they would then try to seek recovery services. If you had an overdose reversed by members of our emergency medical services team, which is through the fire department. A lot of people don't realize that. All of that falls under the fire department. And you didn't want to be transported, you didn't get access to medically assisted treatment.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, and so now what they've done is they spent a lot of time coordinating it because you have to coordinate with all these different levels. You have to coordinate with the hospital, you have to coordinate with other medical officials, there's issues around HIPAA authorizations, but they've gotten it to the point where they can now offer this on the street. And so that is very important.
Saving a lot of lives.
Yes,
Yeah.
yes. I mean, I think that we have been really lucky that team has been willing to think out of the box. Yeah. I'm really grateful for the leadership of Chief LaChance. You know, his team can go to him. He's very open-minded. And Chief LaChance knows I love data. I love data. And I especially love his reports. So our next meeting is on Thursday, the 19th. If you're watching this after the 19th, once again, you can go to the city's website. There's a little circle in the bottom left-hand corner that says agenda. That takes you to the civic clerk system. You just go to the 19th, find the Public Safety Committee meeting, and you'll be able to watch it. So we get a rundown from the chief of his presentation to his fire commission, and we get to see a lot of data related to what the fire department is doing. We also get a lot of information on any programs they want the public to be aware of.
So I suspect that, like on that program that they innovated and put out on the street, that also helps the medical system. It helps the hospital and reduces the tensions that go there. It may take a little bit more. They can treat people on the street and don't have to transport up there and tie those services up.
Exactly.
So, you know, in terms of the burden on the medical system, this is something that it sounds like the fire department is really helping. And we're, you know,
it is.
We voted to put money into that. So when people say, oh, maybe you're not doing anything, well, that this program doesn't happen if the council doesn't support it, which is what we did that. And we did this under the prior administration, to be
We did
fair.
that too, and then there is monies that the state is giving from the opioid settlement funds, and some of that money's been used. I feel that, you know, people having information about harm reduction tactics, because that's a harm reduction tactic. Okay. We have a lot of exhaustion in the community with regards to the drug crisis right now. Yeah. I completely understand why. A lot of activity moves around town. You know, for example, we had a tremendous amount of activity around the library. Then there were steps taken to deal with that activity. And then it started moving. Then it moved to Buell Street area in the garage. And then there were steps taken to deal with it there. And it's just moving around. So we need people in the community to understand. At our last Public Safety Committee meeting in November, we had a really great presentation from Bella Fern, Ed Baker, Chief LaChance also chimed in. The Assistant Cape Director, Lacey Smith, also chimed in, and it was talking about harm reduction overall and what that means. What that means to an individual suffering from SUD, substance use disorder, and what that means to the community. Because for every person we can help and every person we can get into recovery, that is a person who comes back into our community as an individual who's able to live and contribute to that community, as opposed to possibly being putting strain on the community with activities that they may be participating in order to support their crisis, in order to do what they feel they need to do in order to get more of their particular substance of choice, which for many people, regrettably, is fentanyl, or fentanyl laced with a variety of things. I think that the public, because they are so frustrated by what is going on, they don't understand harm reduction. I literally had a business owner send an email saying, at the thought of the possibility of saying we may want to move funds around, give it on the ballot item, say to the city, can we have permission to use the public safety tax money for other things other than public safety? And they were like, absolutely not, and I don't want anything going to harm reduction. That was stunning to me. You're a business downtown, which is the epicenter of the drug crisis, not just in Burlington, but in Chittenden County.
Yeah.
And you don't want any money spent on harm reduction. So that was one of the reasons I wanted to have the conversation there, because I felt like people don't understand what harm reduction means. They don't, it's like about getting people to the point where we can get them into recovery in order to have them be able to take back their lives and become members of the community again. We have this whole like underbelly that is developed in our city. Not every person who suffers from SUD is unhoused.
Right.
Not every person who's unhoused suffers from SUD. Unfortunately, a lot of people make these general assumptions that are not always true, and it affects how they treat people. There is no doubt that there is some overlap.
Yeah.
But I would ask that people not make assumptions, and I would ask that people understand what harm reduction means, and that harm reduction helps us all. It literally is what it means, harm reduction. Harm reduction to the community, to individuals in the community, to businesses in the community, schools, libraries, etc. So in addition to the fire report, we have, if Chief Murad's available, or the executive manager, Shannon Trammell, they reviewed the police department's report. I also tried to provide data from Sheriff George's office, because there's always a rumor going around that the state's attorney doesn't do anything. Well, the state's attorney routinely has like 2,600 to 3,000 criminal cases alone. So that's busy, and that's just criminal cases alone, and it's hundreds of stolen cars, hundreds of retail theft. And the way our system is there's always a backlog. And when you look at all the counties, we're right kind of in the middle. You know, we're not at the
backlog.
In terms of the backlog. And there's some months where they close more cases and are opened. And there's some months where it's just kind of right about even. And there's some months where it's lower. And if there's a real dip, one month I went, I was like, wow, what happened? She said, oh, I had a murder case. So if you have a murder case, you have a manslaughter case, these cases,
they take a lot of time.
They take a lot of time. So they're using up the court time and the time with the judge that's been allocated, which pushes other cases back. We have a lot of complaints about quote unquote repeat offenders, frequent flyers.
Yeah, let's talk about the feeling that is out there, and I think that there's some legitimacy to it about the lack of accountability for people who are doing shoplifting or being arrested and even convicted, and then they just get put right back on the street. And I understand also that there's some things that are being worked on now to try to address those issues.
Yes, so I have really deep dived a lot of this to say what is going on. I've learned so much, and I really encourage people. At the November meeting, we also had Robin Joy from the Crime Research Group. They are involved, Robin and the Crime Research Group are involved in a big study going on, looking at data throughout the entire state of Vermont. It's a project for the state of Vermont to look at how cases move or don't move through our system. It was very, very interesting. It was kind of a accumulation of other information I'd gotten before. Access to data. We provided the links to the different reports that she was talking to. So if you're out there and you want to see data about how the cases are moving and what types of cases, how these cases are being adjudicated, there are certain reports and they're kind of interactive. You can take a look at a whole variety of things. Too much to go into now, but highly recommend watching that November meeting. It was very interesting. But one of the first things she talks about is she talks about the rules around bail. Right? We have our Vermont laws, and this little thing called the Vermont Constitution weren't ready for what happened after COVID.
Okay.
Because a lot of what we're seeing and what other municipalities are seeing across the state and what cities and municipalities across the country and the world are seeing post-COVID is that as a result of so many people being on the edge in our society, and then suddenly not having access to their jobs, not being able to work, possibly getting sick and accumulating medical expenses they couldn't pay, losing loved ones who were breadwinners for the family, all of that stress just saw a collapse of our, safety blanket, which was barely existing. So we're seeing levels of drug use. We're seeing levels of crime that we didn't see before the pandemic. They were there. We've been through certain drug crises before. I want to give a quick shout out to VT Digger. They have a 2-part article called The Third Wave. It is honestly one of the best write-ups that I have seen for people to read, to have a really good understanding of what we've been through before and what's happening now. But Vermont, the one example I use all the time is Vermont did not have a statute for stolen cars. And we have had record card theft, not only here in Burlington, South Burlington, but other municipalities across. And we don't have a statute for stolen cars. We had a statute that says you couldn't drive a car without the permission of the owner. It's a very weak statute.
You have to prove that.
Cars would be returned totaled. People be living in them. Some people are using drugs in them. They would be destroyed, just driven around to gas. Now, it wasn't like these cars were being put in containers and shipped overseas. People were using them for shelter, to using them. But we had a very, how do you prove that they drove without permission? If they weren't actually seen, if they weren't caught on a camera, and even if they were caught on a camera, the statute was really weak. You're not getting someone held for that because of the statute.
Right.
And our rules basically say that there's only certain types of crimes, generally with violence involved, where the expectation is if you were found guilty, you would be serving a certain sentence, that you would get bail or you would get held. Mm-hmm. And if you were held, your case had to be taken care of quickly. So you have retail theft, a whole variety of larcenies, and car theft. You have certain individuals who do these things over and over again, and they're amassing cases, and then they're being let go
on conditions of release. Then they break the conditions of release, and it just
exactly. Yeah. So the whole reason I invited Rob and Joy is because I'm trying to have an understanding about conditions of release. Right? We hear it all the time. They have conditions of release. Why isn't something happen if they violate those conditions of release? Yeah. Well, something does happen. If they violate the conditions of release, and they get another case because they violated the conditions of release. So the accountability is the fact that they get another case. Yeah. So that's why we have these individuals walking around with so many cases, because they've done things that, according to the statutes, they can't get held for.
So this is well beyond what our capacity is as a city. Exactly. We don't write those laws. We don't administer the judicial system.
Exactly.
But I understand that there are meetings coming up. Pretty soon, and maybe have been happening, related to this, to see if we can bring all the players together to make a change. And I did hear the mayor talk about the potential for even special courts or dockets for things like retail theft, because it is such a major economic hit on businesses downtown.
Exactly. And businesses downtown, businesses, in the South End. I met once with we have a plaza that has, major stores that people go to, and each store is under the same corporate umbrella.
Okay.
So they each have their own loss prevention officer. All three came to Burlington. And I just happened to run into them trying to have an understanding. They're like, well, we're trying to meet with your mayor. We're trying to meet with your chief of police because we're having these issues. We are having just outrageous levels of retail theft. They were also having issues with people overdosing in their
My
bathrooms.
recollection is this was like last year? Or
This was like 2 years ago.
Okay.
And it's something that I've been following because it's continued
Yeah.
to happen. So they had things on camera, they were trespassing people. And, they said to me, I was just like, okay, everybody has retail theft. This is when I really began to have a full understanding that this was at a level that we had not seen before. They're like, yeah, these stores are number one in the country. I was like, wow. Then that led to me pushing on questions about our online reporting system at the police department, and why they weren't getting any responses, because they're saying, we know who this person is, they were trespassed, we got pictures off our cameras,
Sure.
we have all of this, we get no response. So that would be a whole nother show, but just
these are
trying to talk through all these things and address these problems. And the thing too, I just want to go back to conditions of release. A curious statistic, there was one person who had a record of something like 300 open cases because they had to check in at their local police department twice a day. And if they didn't do that, they got another case.
Sure.
So I think one of the things that we're doing as a council that we started last year was the city has lobbyists.
Yeah.
And we said, well, what are the lobbyists doing?
Yeah.
We wanted to have a better understanding. So the last year of the prior administration really having meetings for the first time, really with the lobbyists. So we could sit down with the lobbyists and we can say, these are our issues.
Better late than never.
Yeah, better late than never. We could say, we need the legislature to look at the laws around shoplifting.
Yeah.
Because individuals know if they walk out under $900, then they're not going to be held. They know it's not a serious charge.
Yeah.
And they keep going in and doing it over and over again. So then that became like a cumulative thing, for example. Put a little bit more teeth in the driving without ownership's permission, so that our police department and other police departments could make cases. People, we're the media darling. They love to say all these things about Burlington. We are still a great place to be. Let's just make that clear. And we are not the only ones going through this. Not that it's necessarily supposed to make us feel
that there's not a problem to
it
deal
is a
with.
fact, and we all need. I think part of, especially with Mayor Emma's experience in the legislature, knowing how things work there, we have to get all the legislatures in Chittenden County together on the same page, and then they have to work with other legislatures, because what's happening here is happening in St. Albans, is happening in Barry, is happening in Brattleboro, is happening in Rutland, and all through areas of the state. So we have to get everybody on the same page in order to help all of our police departments.
Yeah, I mean, she met with the governor, which was, I think, a big step. In terms
I think it was good stuff. Yeah, I was disappointed to hear that he fully didn't understand what we were going through, especially with regards to the situation with the unhoused.
Yeah.
We have record numbers of unhoused in our city. 350 at one point. The update that we got at the most recent council is that number has dropped a little bit, but is still still extremely high. And that's what people don't understand. We have never seen anything like this before. And we simply are paying money and expending resources, and we just don't have the money. We are trying to be, to Mayor Mulvaney Stanik's credit, she is already thinking about FY26 and already thinking about the budget gap that's going to occur then. Every move she's making is really looking at the big picture, really thinking out the box, and we've spent like $6 million on the issues of unhoused, and it's not sustainable.
No.
We pulled some porta potties, realized we had to put some back. We don't have adequate public bathrooms. And
let's pivot.
Yes.
Let's pivot to, I know, an item, and we got about 15 minutes left. So let's pivot to an item that I know is near and dear to your heart, and that is the retention and recruitment of police officers.
Oh, God.
Because, I mean, clearly much of this relates to the fact that we are, I think, over 20 officers under the cap that we've got. So, I mean,
Yeah.
and that would be a major step if we could get close to that cap, and it would give us an opportunity to then look and see what we need. So talk to us.
So first thing I want to say is, like, I'm not anti-police. I'm not. I've been given that reputation by some people because I've been very vocal as my time as a police commissioner. And as a city council, I've been very concerned about oversight and accountability. We've had multiple lawsuits. We still have an open lawsuit. We still have complaints around distrust of our department within our community. These are things that will not go away until they are properly dealt with. And I am vocal about that. That doesn't mean I'm against police officers. I am saying that we have to address some of these things honestly that are affecting how our officers feel about what they perceive to be a lack of community support. I do not think it is fair to say that caring about oversight and accountability means that I don't support police officers or any other counselor who feels that, or any other police commissioner who felt that before or feels that now, or any community member. That is deeply troubling to me, that is the feeling that some officers have. I am going through the meeting on 12/19. We will be discussing the BPOA survey that they did.
This is going to be at the Public Safety Committee.
Yes. So
another reason for people to tune in.
Yes, and to read it. If you don't want to listen to the meeting, but you want to read what it says. So when I express my concern about certain feedback from officers, you can read what they said. There is some things in there that are redacted, but I said, hey, what's the FOIA request that VT Digger did? I want to see a copy of what was sent to them.
Yeah.
And I got it, and we're going to talk about it.
So is that posted on the agenda? Do you know
it is? Yes, it should be posted on the agenda.
Okay,
it should be. I mean, certainly after the 19th, it will be posted on the agenda.
And people can actually call in with public comment. So if they read it before, there's a public comment, because that's part of what transparent government is about. Yeah.
And if they end up watching the meeting afterwards, or you're watching this later and you didn't realize, you can go and you can look in. If you have any questions, you can feel free to email me. You can show up at public comment at the next meeting. But the categories roughly, obviously can't go through everything. The categories were the concern of officers of a lack of support from city councilors, the concern of officers about lack of support from the mayor, lack of support from the community, but also issues with leadership. Also issues with
internal leadership of BPD.
Internal leadership. And this is something that I have also been very vocal about. I've had concerns going back to being a police commissioner about leadership of the current police chief. And I've been especially frustrated by the lack of a strategic plan for recruitment and retention. I have said the same things over and over again, and it's not until this change of administration that we're finally getting some traction. But even then, without his cooperation, without him being willing to take on certain things, like we've had a lot of conversations about the lack of social media. This is 2024 going into 2025. The way certain generation gets their information and finds out about jobs is online, period. That's what they do. Back in our day, we might be looking through a newspaper.
Went to the newspaper,
You went to the newspaper. If you were going to move to a different area, you might call up that newspaper and ask for a subscription, have a paper mailed to you to learn more about the community. We have the internets now, right? So we weren't using that, and I found that stunning. The pillars of 21st century policing, one of the pillars says that you must use social media and other technology for community engagement, recruitment, and retention. Every blog that I've read, and there's many, every industry has blogs these days. They have blogs, they have online sites that you used to be able to buy, like trade magazines, right? If you were in a certain business or industry, you'd have a trade magazine. All this is online now. Department of Justice, all these places, various states, our state government sites, state government sites of other cities. I go on other police department sites. I've seen so much, and I can tell you the same thing over and over again, regardless of the politics of a community. The same thing over and over again. If a department does not have a robust social media and online strategy, they are behind the ball. This department doesn't have it. We funded a public information and community engagement officer. We gave them the money. We have thrown so much money. Money. At some point, we have to say, maybe the problem isn't money.
Yeah. I mean, it's kind of striking, and it is a different entity, the fire department. But we looked at we looked at the video, the promotional recruiting video, and what struck me actually about it, not the cost, which was very low, but was the department saying this is a great place to be.
Yes.
And we love serving and protecting the people here, and we're supported by the city.
Yes.
And where I sit, we need a partner with the police command in particular that puts out that message, a message that says, this is a great place, and we can make this happen. And the city council has done all these positive things. We don't really hear that. We hear a re-litigation from 2020 as if nothing else has happened. But let me turn to...
Can I quickly say something, please? Because that's so important. I was watching the last police commission meeting, and literally someone speaking in public forum said that very thing. We don't hear good things about the police department from the police department.
Yep.
They said that very thing. To Chief LaChance at the fire department, he did a social media campaign to boost applications from lateral transfers. That is, experienced firefighters from other areas to recruit them to come to the city of Burlington. They did that video in-house, and it promoted the fire department, working at that fire department. It promoted the city of Burlington. This is a great city to be in.
And it is.
They put it online for, 2.5 weeks. They paid for digital advertising and media that firefighters read. 2.5 weeks, they drove 16 applications, I think, with 6 qualified to move forward in 2.5 weeks. Now, as of mid-July, the police department had only had 26 applications in total, not just to move forward, but in total. 2.5 weeks, fire department was able to drive 16 with 6 qualified to move forward, and at a cost of $11.54, which is about 11 cents a click. I mean, this is what I'm talking about. This is ABC 123 that the police department is not doing, and the fire department has a budget of $3,200, and we've given the police department $100,000. That's not fully accounted for. They can't continue to expect that level of money without having anything to show for it and without having a strategic online plan. I am a Burlington taxpayer just like many of you. I am here expressing these concerns because it matters. We have to be doing something differently. Thank you for letting me go back to that.
Well, of course, and of course, all of our time is way too short. We got 5 minutes left. Kevin is telling me, but so let's actually pivot to Burlington to something non-community safety, which is the budget and which is affordability. And I know that you and I and others in our caucus have been talking about affordability for a while, and including changes in the tax system. But I know you have been speaking to that. In relationship to proposals that have come forward, be it the Winooski Bridge or bonding for other infrastructure. So talk to us about that.
I think everybody knows that we were hit hard this year. For Burlington, we have had such issues with deferred maintenance across the board. Buildings, replacing our vehicles, which are crucial. to our various departments, police, fire, Department of Public Works, buildings. We have many sick buildings. The fire department and the police department are probably the most well-known, but certainly not the only. And the chickens will come home to roost. And this is another thing that Mayor Mulvaney Stanek has to deal with is decades of deferred maintenance. Yeah. I just don't know what to say about the water situation. I see the director of that department doing phenomenal jobs. I urge everyone to watch her presentations. They're making the rounds of the MPAs and made presentations to the city council. It is a major, major bond.
Yeah, although she is actually, Megan Moore, the director there, and Chapin Spencer are looking at ways to do this in the absolutely most affordable way,
yes,
including trying to reduce, the ask and to
yes,
and to sequence it so that it reflects the ability of people to pay. They're looking
yes,
at affordability pieces for it, including not just the poorest of the poor, but lower income working
yep,
people. So yeah, there's most definitely these are big ticket items, but
big ticket items, and thank you for mentioning that. It's covered in the presentations, and I do think because it is so important to the city that people should be watching these presentations to understand, because in the long term our bills will be going up, and it is going to be necessary.
But you gotta have clean water.
That's exactly what I was going to say.
We get it from the lake, and we drop our wastewater into the lake.
Exactly. We know that there are many cities across this country that have had disasters with their water system.
Yes, we do not want to be Flint.
We don't want to be Flint. We don't want to be any of these places where we can't turn on clean water to wash in, to shower, to cook our food. We can't risk that. So it is something that we're going to be asking people to vote for, and also to increase the capacity of moving water across the city. That's going to be really important when we think about how we're trying to build more housing.
We got a housing crisis, and that's not just a housing crisis for renters, but for people who own their own home and can't afford it, and the prices are so high. And so we do have to build more, but if you don't have the capacity to provide the water, to provide the fire suppression systems, the sprinklers of big buildings, for example, you are not going to be able to have those numbers. So if you're concerned about your high rents, well, this is a piece which is necessary to deal with that. Yeah,
and hopefully in the long run, when we have this increased capacity to support the increased building that we want to do, increased building gives us a stronger foundation for property taxes, which I hope we somehow get away with, because we need to figure something else out. The strain's just too much on people for someone like myself, who's actually, am I going to be able to age in place in Burlington, right?
Yeah.
I've got equity in my home. I certainly can't afford to move anyplace else in the city, but does that mean I leave? And a lot of people are having to think about that because of being on fixed incomes when you get.
Well, hopefully the mayor is about to put together a task force of advisor citizens that will advise in terms of alternatives that will make the property tax more based on the ability to pay. There are a number of ways that
and we need to have that discussion. We've not had that. We've had people complaining about it for years, and now we finally have a mayor willing to say that this is a discussion that needs to happen. I love her task force. I love the committees to put together. The public safety committee, community advisors was fantastic. Really bringing together so many people that were kept out of the conversation before, but had so much to offer.
Reminds me of when Bernie first got elected, and I'm old enough to have been active and around during those days. And you had these major task forces. There was a task force when Ronald Reagan cut off revenue sharing, and all of a sudden we had millions of dollars of a gap And this was in the 80s, so that was like real money then, like our big gap. And he put together a task force, and as a result, we were able to get the gross receipts tax and the franchise fee and other tools that were able to spread that out, and particularly with regard to the big nonprofit institutions that don't pay any taxes. They provide a tremendous value for this community.
Pilot funds
But-
drive me crazy.
Yeah,
Let's
yeah.
take a look at those.
Those
Let's
are a
take a
little hard-
look at those agreements.
They are a little hard. I think that is a little harder because of state law with regard to that. But yeah, all of these,
I know, but we haven't looked at some of these agreements in a really long time.
it would be well worth it to
would
look
be
at
well
them,
worth-
because the costs have continued to rise.
Exactly,
And-
and the cost of maintaining the infrastructure
Absolutely.
around these properties is very, very important. I want to say one thing about these committees and these task force, because one of the things that's really frustrating in the past is people are like, oh, another committee, and nothing happens. This mayor gathers information, makes a plan, and people are working on it.
And we are definitely we're doing that. So
Yeah,
I have
it's just
been-
not overnight.
No, it never. It cannot be cheap, quick, and perfect.
Right.
And so but people do expect and that we act. And they're right to do that. And I have been told, speaking about acting, that I have to close us down because we are at time. And I totally appreciate the folks at CCTV for keeping me in line, because after all, we would just keep
Keep him in.
going.
He's keeping
we
me
would
in
just keep
line.
going. So I want to thank you, Milo.
Thank you.
You're my sister in struggle and
thank
in
you.
work. And I look forward to doing this again really
Thank you for
soon.
keeping me sane.
There you go. It is my
Helping me
pleasure.
hanging in there.
Everybody, thank you for watching. Whenever you do watch this, and our contacts are in the city's directory and what have you. And for me, and let me just say, it is most helpful if you like or disagree with something, to give me something that will allow me to have a conversation. We get those, and then we also get people who just yell at us. And this is like a black hole, and we're just people too. So that is sort of a plea that I have on this in this holiday season. And thank you and good night. Take care.